The 2025 MUFON Symposium was dedicated to Leonard Stringfield. What follows is a presentation by Robert Spearing, MUFON's Director of International Development, as he talks about his findings within the Stringfield personal diaries regarding the legendary Valiant Thor.
Item 6, Valiant Thor. I think everybody knows Valiant Thor. Yeah, how many people have heard of Valiant Thor? Okay, maybe 40%. All right, very famous story. Whether or not it's true is another question. In 1967, a fellow by the name of Dr. Frank Stranges wrote a book called Stranger at the Pentagon, and it's been the subject of movies and documentaries, and it's about a fellow named Valiant Thor, Commander Valiant Thor, who claimed to be from Venus. And his mission in 1957, March of 1957, when he arrived on Earth, was to try to get us to stop using hydrogen bombs in exchange for alien technology. Okay, when he landed on the banks of the Potomac River, according to Dr. Frank Stranges, in March of 1957, he met two police officers, asked to be brought to President Eisenhower. He was taken to the Pentagon, eventually met Eisenhower. Today, if you go on Amazon, you'll find dozens of books purportedly written by Valiant Thor, okay, where people are channeling his wisdom, because in the book Stranger at the Pentagon, he comes across as this Christ-like spiritual benevolent entity and a true alpha male. But who is Frank Stranges? He had a checkered past. He was a pseudo-Christianary pastor who believed that Jesus was an extraterrestrial. He also got arrested one time with a van load of marijuana, so his credibility was iffy. He only died around the turn of the century, but he is the only witness to Valiant Thor actually existing. All right, so there's a problem with the story. All right, so Val arrives in March of 1957. He's wearing a golden uniform, okay? And they go and they do tests on this uniform. And they shoot bullets at it, they burn it, all right? It's indestructible, all right? In 1957, April, he attends a backyard lecture by contactee Howard Menger, and is photographed by August C. Roberts with his brother Don and two female crew members. Don is actually spelled D-O-N-N. And he is dressed in this impeccable three-piece suit with a white tie. He's no longer in the golden uniform. He allegedly speaks at the UN in the autumn of 1957, and he lives at the Pentagon for 3 years from 1957 to 1960, meeting Dr. Stranges along the way. He seems to have Superman powers. He can make things disappear. He can use telekinesis, and he seems to be almost like a super soldier. He maintains a friendship with Stranges until at least 1981, but he doesn't age. He's always 30-ish. Tall, dark, and handsome, and 30-ish. On June 5th, 1968, Robert F. Kennedy was assassinated. Stranges and Thor are nearby in LA. And remember this because this is important. June 1968, Los Angeles. And Thor's looking at the television after RFK is assassinated, and he says, "Poor man, if only he had listened to me," intimating that he had met Robert F. Kennedy Sr. At one point after that, he asked Stranges, "Would you like to see my ship?" Stranges says yeah, and they drive down to Mexico on the Pacific coast, and he takes Stranges up in sort of like a drone craft, a smaller craft, up to the mothership. And the mothership is this incredibly large cigar-shaped object. And all of the ports into it seem to be compartmentalized into groups of 8. And when they get close, he sees craft coming in and out of the mothership. And also when he goes inside, he sees hundreds and hundreds of crewmen, and they're all wearing this golden plastic gold lame type outfit. And this is what one of the very, very few pictures of Valiant Thor looks like. Very handsome guy. And next to him is his brother Don, not so alpha as Val. And besides them are two female crewmates, according to Dr. Frank Stranges. This was at Howard Menger's house, a very famous contactee. So, Thor is tall, dark, and handsome. He's described as having black eyes, like an angel's face, with a mustache, because in July of 1957, March he lands in Washington, April he's in New Jersey, he's near Rome, Italy in July of 1957, only this time he's got a mustache. Okay, which in Italy is also a sign of masculinity. He comes across a fellow by the name of Luciano Galli, who's walking along, and he pulls up in a Fiat 100, and he's dressed in his Howard Menger three-piece suit, and the guy driving, who's described as a little less masculine, is wearing the gold lame suit. So now if this is true, we have an additional witness, other than strangers, to Valiant Thor and Don, okay? And Luciano asks him, where you're from, and he says, from a base near the planet Venus. He doesn't identify himself as Valiant Thor, but he identifies himself as a commander. And if you ever go back to the works of Charles Fort, the Book of the Damned, Charles Fort talks about that in the 1800s there was a French astronomer who believed that he saw a planet called Vulcan inside the orbit of Mercury, which mysteriously disappears. And I'm just making a possible connection that maybe Vulcan was not a planet at all, that this 19th century astronomer was seeing, but maybe some sort of mothercraft that he caught in his telescope, which comes and goes. Anyway, the ship, in this case, has compartmentalization in the hangars of 6 sections. This is very close to what Stranges says, where it had 8 sections compartmentalized. And the crew on the mothership wore silky outfits, these golden outfits like Thor's Washington, D.C. uniform. Also, the witness noticed Val Thor, if that's who we're talking about, in town about a week before and called him a mysterious stranger. This is the original account from this is from Flying Saucer magazine, and it's also in David Webb's Humcat, the humanoid catalog, which we actually have in the Project Aquarius library, and it details all humanoid accounts from ancient times up until the mid-1970s.
MUFON is a mutual UFO network. If you're curious about UFOs and how the story is unfolding, become a member. We are your worldwide community of like-minded people.
Next evidence that Val Thor may be real. In Diary 48, 1982, William Moore, the fellow who wrote the book The Roswell Incident, wanted to do a revised edition. And somehow Stringfield pasted this into Diary 48. And what's interesting is that at Roswell that week in 1947, the radio station that was owned by Walt Whitmore Sr. had a reporter named Frank Joyce. And Bill Moore interviewed Frank Joyce in the 80s. And basically the story that they tell Bill Moore is the rancher Brazel called Joyce and tells him the crash story before possibly Jesse Marcel even went out to the crash site. Brazel is going to go and spill the beans at a local newspaper, and when he gets there, he flips his story. And Joyce got very upset, and Whitmore, Joyce believed, had been flipped also and was cooperating with the United States government to scare Brazel. All right, anyway, about July 6th or 7th, Joyce states, remember this from Italy, a very strange man came into town, long face, high forehead, sharp chin, active and vigorous to be 30-ish, but was he 60, which I found a very interesting thing. He couldn't tell if the guy was 30 or 60 years old. But again, we have somebody that's possibly 30-ish, tall, dark, and handsome. All right? Anyway, Whitmore and Joyce got into Whitmore's car to go out to the crash site, either on July 7th, 8th, or 9th. And as they're getting in the car, this stranger gets in the car with them. Joyce is in the back seat. The stranger is wearing a gold uniform. And he said it wasn't any military form that I was familiar with, although it tended to approach some of the Army's fabrics that I had seen, but I can't tell you for sure. Anyway, the color was something approaching an off-gold color. I can't quite describe it. It was like a uniform, but it wasn't a uniform. I didn't see any insignia or anything. They drive out to the ranch, and on the way, Joyce is trying to make conversation, and Valiant Thor, if that's who it is ignoring him. He's not the nice guy that Dr. Frame just talks about. And Whitmore says something to him, and he only answers, yeah. They get out to the ranch, they get out of the car, and this Val Thor fellow turns to Joyce and says, you wait here. Go in that barn and wait for us. And Joyce somehow feels hypnotically compelled to go into the barn and wait for them. And Joyce and the fellow in the gold lame outfit drive out to the crash site at Roswell. About an hour later, Whitmore comes back alone. Where did the guy in the gold uniform go? He left them out in the desert. That only means two things. The United States military or something got him, or his ship Victory 1, if he was Val Thor, came and picked him up. But the question is, why was Valiant Thor, if he exists, out at the Roswell crash? I believe it has something to do with the alien headsets. I don't think Valiant Thor was here on a benevolent mission to give us technology in exchange for not using hydrogen bombs. I think he had a concern, whoever he was, about the little grays. When Joyce was dying, he told a story to Bill Moore about Whitmore, all right? Or is it Whitmore? Yeah, so Whitmore, when Whitmore was dying, the owner of the radio station, Joyce goes to see him on his deathbed, all right? And the last thing that Whitmore says to Joyce is this, remember when we went out to Roswell? And Joyce says, yeah. And Whitmore says to him, they weren't green. And this goes back to what Greg was talking about, that they were gray or brown, the little grays. Greg mentioned this also, Diary 37, all right? And he talks about an informant who allegedly saw a cutaway of a craft in the early 1950s that was recovered, plus the headband receiver worn by the aliens. Anyone involved in the retrieval were subjected to intense scrutiny and search. One man must have kept a part of something, and he mysteriously disappeared. And we call that, he was sent to the turkey farm, okay?
Thank you for watching this presentation from the 2025 MUFON Symposium. If you'd like to see more presentations from the symposium or previous symposiums from years past, please check out MUFONtelevision.com.